and Jamey Eisenberg from the NFL owners meetings in Palm Beach, Florida. Pete, can you have a conversation about Jefferson and Cook without mentioning Kirk Cousins?
No, you cannot. I mean, you have to have Kirk Cousins in the conversation. Come on, you know better than that. This is all about the quarterback. This league is quarterback driven. I don't care what your weapons are, and they have great weapons with the Minnesota Vikings, but it's all about Kirk Cousins and how well he plays and whether he can play in a big moment. I mean, that's the unanswered question about Kirk Cousins, the big moment. He hasn't proven to be a quarterback who can make the big plays in the big moment. So that's the next step for Kevin O'Connell as the head coach, is trying to get Kirk Cousins to play bigger in the big moment and in the big games.
Well, I care about the weapon.
Well, of course you do.
It's going to be fun to see how these guys operate. And yes, Kirk Cousins does have some value as a fantasy quarterback, a great guy to wait for if you decide to let the other players in your league take some high draft picks on the position. But, you know, you look at these guys, Dalvin Cook's still a first-round pick. I think he's going to have a monster season with Kevin O'Connell calling plays. I think you'll see a situation where Justin Jefferson maybe has the Cooper Kupp type of role where he could be the #1 receiver in fantasy. He's obviously not been far off the last couple of seasons. Then you have Adam Thielen as a good value pick, probably in round 5 or 6, depending on how he goes in the draft. And let's not forget, Irv Smith coming back from the injury was one of my favorite sleepers last season. Going to be one of my favorite sleepers once again. Tight end's a little bit deeper this year, but don't forget about Irv Smith coming off that injury. Could have a chance to have a really special season.
We're looking at offenses with new offensive-minded head coaches. Nathaniel Hackett, he might be set up for the most success in Denver. Pete, is he going to let Russ cook a little bit more than Pete Carroll?
Oh, there's no question about that. And I think, you know, Nate Hackett's been around this league for a while. His father was an offensive coordinator in this league. He knows offensive football, and he's, you know, learned a lot being around Aaron Rodgers. And when you're around a veteran quarterback, I think that kind of will help him with the transition to Russell Wilson. And this is an offense, you know, they want to get the ball down the field. They want to hit the big shots. And if you look at their weapons, they have a lot of talented players. Now, the question becomes, can Jerry Jeudy become his Davante Adams? And I think he has the potential to be that type of player. You see videos out there with Russell Wilson working with Jerry Jeudy. I think that's going to be a big-time combination. So I like what Nate Hackett brings as an offensive coordinator, and I think that Russell Wilson is going to really like it too.
He could be the #1 quarterback in fantasy, and that says a lot knowing what the position has been and will continue to be this year. But you look at it, like you said, I think there's going to be an opportunity for him to finally throw the ball to the level that he wants to, the amount of times that he wants to. And you look at this receiving core, you know, there's some people that think that actually Tim Patrick could be the #1 receiver for the Broncos. No chance. It's going to be Jerry Jeudy. Actually got to spend some time with Cortland Sutton in the last couple of weeks. He's excited about just getting different throws, some end zone fades, some different type of opportunities that he hasn't had in the NFL so far because of Russell Wilson. He's also throwing with Wilson right now as well, you know, along with Jerry Jeudy. But you also got to don't forget the running back situation there in Denver. Now, there was some talk this week about maybe bringing back Melvin Gordon. We don't want that at all. Let's make it the Javonte Williams show. Love the opportunity for him. Javonte will still be a second-round pick, even with Melvin Gordon is there, but it obviously dampens the excitement for Javonte Williams if they bring back a veteran like Gordon. I'd rather them just bring back somebody that's a little lesser talented type of guy and allow Javonte Williams to be the lead type of running back that could be great for fantasy as well.
It could be a huge fantasy season for Russell Wilson. Jamey Eisenberg says he has the potential to be a #1 quarterback in the league in fantasy. Let's go to Josh McDaniels and the Raiders. Davante Adams joining the fray. Pete, how do you expect that to work out?
Well, I think it's a good match with Derek Carr and and when you look at Davante Adams, they're very close. They're friends. They live next door to each other. They're close, so that's going to help their relationship. But I think more than that, I think Josh McDaniels is a brilliant offensive mind. And I think he's going to grow from his first experience as a head coach. He's going to be much better, much more amenable and easy to deal with in terms of his players, and I think that will rub off on the offense. My concern with the Raiders' offense is the offensive line. They have to get better up front. They have to be more stout in pass protection. They have to be able to run the football. But I'm always bullish on a Josh McDaniels offense because I think he calls a really good game, and I think he's one of the best play callers, if not the best in this league. So Derek Carr in that offense is going to be explosive.
So you're saying Derek Carr is better than Tim Tebow?
A lot better.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that. Yeah, Derek Carr has a chance to be a pretty good fantasy quarterback as well. I actually like him better than Aaron Rodgers now because of the addition of Davante Adams. I do think that Josh McDaniels, with the additional weapons, will help Derek Carr sort of get back to the quarterback we saw early in his career when he had Michael Crabtree and Amari Cooper, and he was able to throw the ball with a little bit more success. He's had some good seasons, but now he has a chance to be one of the better fantasy quarterbacks at the best price because he's going to go so late in drafts. Now, obviously, Davante Adams loses as a fantasy wide receiver going to the Raiders, going to Derek Carr from Aaron Rodgers, but not so much. He was going to be the #1 or #2 receiver receiver off the board. Now he's closer to 4 or 5. And obviously the Tyreek Hill move, some of the other things that we've seen at the wide receiver position, still keeps Davante Adams at a high level. Hopefully the targets are going to be at a high level. But then when you start to talk about the targets, bad situation slightly for Darren Waller. I still think he's a top 5 tight end coming into the season, but clearly not at the same level because the targets are going to be a little bit different because Adams is there. And then you look at Josh Jacobs, still has a chance to be a very special talent at the running back position. Hopefully McDaniels involves him in the passing game like we've seen with guys like James White in New England. But Josh Jacobs, when the team is having success, he has his best fantasy production. So hopefully a lot of wins coming for Las Vegas this year.
The most intriguing offense for a new head coach might be in Miami with the speed that they have around Tua. But how is Mike McDaniel going to figure out how to get the ball from Tua to the speedsters, Pete?
Well, I think maybe they'll use a baton instead of a football and let them just go, run track out there because they can flat out fly. We know that with Waddle and Hill, they can get up the field quickly. The problem is Tua. And does Tua have the ability to drive the football down the field? What I think Mike McDaniel will do, remember, he'll bring the 49ers offense here. He already said this week he's going to try and use some of the principles to allow Tyreek Hill to be a lot like Deebo Samuel. I don't imagine they will run the football with him from the backfield as much, but they'll get creative with him, get the ball into his hands quickly. The one thing about Tua is he has to be able to hit the deep shots better than he's been able to. And that's the unknown for this team. And if he makes strides, this offense is going to be dynamic. If he doesn't, you'll see Teddy Bridgewater in there sooner rather than later.
Oh, come on, Pete. There's fire in the belly now.
Yeah.
There's fire in the belly for Tua. There's weapons for Tua. And so I think that's going to allow him to flourish, and hopefully the offensive line holds up because that's been a miserable situation for the last couple of years. So Teron Armstead, Connor Williams, some of the guys they brought in, they'll still address it in the NFL draft. But obviously putting the weapons around Tua should allow him to be another quarterback. Again, it's such a deep position. You can wait for guys like Derek Carr, for guys like Tua Tagovailoa, get some great value, Kirk Cousins as well. But clearly you're looking at the receivers as the premier players for this Dolphins offense. So Tyreek Hill, he obviously loses fantasy value going from Patrick Mahomes to Tua Tagovailoa, but still a guy you're going to take probably in round 2. If he slips to round 3, I think that's a steal. He's no longer a first-round pick. Hopefully we still get the type of target opportunities that we saw from Kansas City. But like you said, Pete, the offense from San Francisco, what do they do well? They get their guys in space. Yards after catch. Is there anybody better than Tyreek Hill? Probably not. So he's still a guy that you should look at as a top 10 fantasy wide receiver, just no longer a top 5 guy. Jalen Waddle went from a borderline number 1 wide receiver without Tyreek Hill. With Tyreek Hill, still a top 20 guy, better in PPR than non-PPR. The question becomes, which of the 2 running backs are going to be more successful for fantasy managers? I tend to think it's going to be Raheem Mostert, especially based on value. Chase Edmonds will go first. Mostert will probably come a little bit later, but Mostert, another speed guy, obviously comes from the San Francisco system. Mike McDaniel's probably lean on him first, and then we'll see what Chase Edmonds does as that complementary weapon.
I think Pete tuned out after Jamey mentioned Tua and Kirk Cousins in the same sentence. those 2 guys in one sentence, and that's all she wrote for Pete. Doesn't want to hear anything more about those guys.
No, that's not what it was. Hey, Chris, that's not what it was. When he mentioned fire in the belly, there's a bathroom over here. We've seen plenty of people going into that bathroom with fire in the belly. I can tell you that.
Too much information. Too much information.
Yeah, definitely way too much. All right, let's talk one more team here. A lot of the teams that we've talked about so far with first-year head coaches, they're playoff contenders. The Jags, even though Pete would maybe call them a Super Bowl contender at this point, I don't think they're a playoff contender going into this season. What is Doug Peterson, though, Pete, going to do for Trevor Lawrence in his second year? The bar is much lower.
Well, he's already done a lot for him by getting him some weapons. I mean, that was the biggest problem for Trevor Lawrence a year ago. He had no weapons. There was no speed. And I think they went out and added some wide receivers. Christian Kirk, number 1 among them. And I think he's going to be a productive wide receiver in their offense. They had nobody to throw the football to. If you go back and watch the tape last year in the final game of the season against the Colts, Trevor Lawrence looked like the Trevor Lawrence we expected him to look like. And I think he's going to make those strides this year. Doug Peterson knows how to get the best out of quarterbacks. You saw it with Carson Wentz before he got hurt. You saw it with Nick Foles. I mean, he won his Super Bowl with Nick Foles. He should be anointed for sainthood for doing that. So I think he will get the best out of Trevor Lawrence in this offense. It's all about the weapons. You got to be able to throw the ball down the field, and I think you'll see more of that with Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson.
It's going to be a very interesting team, reality, fantasy as well. Trevor Lawrence, not necessarily one of those guys right now that you're looking at to draft, but not a bad prospect, clearly based on what the upside still should be. Really, the question comes, who's going to be the running back in Jacksonville? Because as we saw, James Robinson with the Achilles tear, Travis Etienne didn't play his rookie season because of foot injury, and Doug Peterson, I asked him this yesterday, does Etienne have the opportunity to be that lead guy if Robinson's not ready? He said yes, so that's something that's going to be interesting to follow. Christian Kirk, I think, is still more of a number 3 fantasy wide receiver, not necessarily a lead type of guy for fantasy managers, but there's clearly upside there as well. The guy that I'm interested in, though, Pete, is really Evan Ingram, because clearly he's been a bust, had a good rookie season with the Giants. But what did we see from Doug Peterson with the Eagles?
Tight ends.
Leaning on his tight ends. What did we see from Trevor Lawrence when they got Dan Arnold last year? Leaning on Dan Arnold. Now, obviously, a lack of weapons at the wide receiver position led to that. But I think Ingram could be one of the surprise guys that if you are inclined to take 2 tight ends in your fantasy league, he's not a bad flyer, because there is still plenty of potential for a team that needs significant pass catchers. He could still be a big target.
And he's on a one-year deal. He's on a prove-it deal, so he's going to be motivated to be even better.
That's our fantasy outlook from Jamey Eisenberg, the mayor of Fantasyland, and Pete Prisco, our ha-ha yuck guy. Pete, Jamey, thank you so much. You can hear much more from Jamey on the Fantasy Football Today podcast. Latest episode, they've got a PPR mock draft that will take you through the first 5 rounds of that.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.